Warning: this podcast may cause excessive motivation, increased confidence, and a strong desire to crush your goals. If you're ready to experience the ultimate performance boost, then you're in the right place. On the Performance Podcast, we are all about sharing latest strategies, techniques, and expert insights to help you dominate your competition and achieve greatness. So, what are you waiting for? Let's get this performance party started. I am Dr. Harini Muralidharan, founder and co director of The Performance Doctor, the host of the Performance Podcast, and a sports physician. And today, as our guest, we have Varadayini Gorhe, who is the founder of MindFirst Performance Psych Consulting and the treasurer of the Indian Sports Psychologist Association. Hi, Varadayini, how are you?
Hi, Harini. Thank you for inviting me for this podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board. And knowing you for the time that I do, I think you're the right person to discuss this topic that we've picked today,
Yes.
so supporting the whole athlete from a stakeholder's perspective.
Yeah.
So, Madani, tell me briefly about your journey so far in sports psychology.
Okay. So I think it's been about 13 odd years, but the learning just doesn't stop, right? So I graduated from LAFTRA in 2012. I did my master's in sports and exercise psychology. And I had that thing of just coming back to work with the Indian athletes because I mean both, like, luckily it was a privilege to come back also and like work with
Of
the athletes
course.
here. And secondly, the space was still a little nascent. It's people did not know much about sports psychology back then, but that itself was a very challenging and a good journey to begin with. So it was like a journey. I would say the beginning was topsy turvy, but that itself actually led to a lot of opportunities that were created, and knocking different doors and like helping the coaches, athletes understand more about what sports psychology is, because
Mhm.
I think people had a rough idea about mental training, mental toughness, but athletes and coaches did not know how it has to be executed, what are the different techniques used, how things are
Right.
in their control as well, and so on. So I think it was a very nice journey to begin with, and I started with different sports. Not any specific sport like to begin with, but I think cricket was already out there. Like, I think people knew much more about sports psych in cricket compared to other sports. So that was a good, again, a good platform to have a lot of young talent, working with the younger talent. Same thing goes with racket sport. So I think definitely, I started more from an athlete perspective, but over the years, I also have realized that unless and until the people around the athletes are educated on sports psychology, I don't think that whole system is going to grow, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So over the last few years, I've been, doing a lot of reading as well as some bit of my own research around the environment of sports psychology, like, especially around the athlete, like, or as IOC calls it, as an athlete entourage, which includes different people who, build this journey with the athlete. So, yes, so educating them, sensitizing them to the mental part of the sport is something what I'm actually interested in, even since the time I started the journey, because even my supervisors during the masters were super people who are working with parents. So again, that's
Yep.
something what it's always interested me to like work around the athlete, and not just
Mhm.
the athlete. Yeah.
That's amazing because I think when the environment for an athlete is ideal, that puts them in such a great mental space, for them to actually just focus on their game, focus on their performance, and like, they don't really have to worry about anything else. And that's when it brings out their best. So
Yes.
from that perspective, how essential do you think sports psychology sensitization is to an athlete and to coaches primarily?
Yeah. Okay. So I think when we speak about like that first, step out of the athlete circle, definitely the coach and the parent come under this triad called as a coach parent athlete triad, or the CAP triad, as we call it, like, the coach athlete
Hmm.
parent triad. And helping the athlete understand what parameters are covered in mental training for sport is important, but it's equally important for the coach also to understand that these are the parameters that we address. Because
Correct.
what happens most of the time is the coaches feel that, are we taking up a lot of their work, or are we the ones who might, venture into their space? So there's always that hesitance from the coach saying that, okay, should I work with a sports psychologist? Should my athlete go to a sports psychologist or not? But having said that, we give them that assurance. We try to give them that assurance. And I think what will help them more is understanding the role of a sports psychologist and understanding their role in this mental training journey. So it's not
Correct.
just that the sports psychologist is only the one who's going to work on mental training for the athlete, but the coach has
Correct.
an equally important role to play on how they communicate the right things to the athlete when it comes to mental training.
Yes, makes sense. Makes sense. So, like we've seen a lot of times that few words that a coach says can make or break that day's performance, or maybe even this rest of season for the athlete. So, it
Yeah.
is so important for them to be mindful of it. Something else that I've noticed is athletes spend a lot of time in the treatment rooms, in the physio rooms, in the medical rooms. And somewhere, do you think that has an impact? And how much do the rest of the medical team need to be aware of, the athlete's psyche?
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, like, I have this thing that since you just rightly mentioned, they spend a lot of time in the rehab, especially athletes who are injured. And in that sense, they develop a healthy rapport with the physio or with the SNC, and they have that space. And once that rapport is developed, I think they are also in that space of speaking out a lot of things what they might not speak with a sports psychologist. Right now,
Correct. Correct.
that's what happens. Like, there'll be a lot of venting, there'll be possibly crying, something around that also happens. Now, sensitizing the support staff or the medical team for in through mental training. One thing, what I guess some of the physios and the medical team that I have worked with, they realize is if there is this space when the athlete gets vulnerable, they
Mhm.
immediately tell the athlete, okay, now go and speak to the sports psychologist. They'll give you a better way, a healthier way of dealing with this. So
Absolutely.
that's something what I've seen with a lot of people who know what it is. Where are the signs? What are the symptoms which you can observe and say that, okay, maybe right now the athlete is not in a good space. They are more vulnerable. So it's a good time for them to go to the sports psychologist. So these are things which I think once the support staff or the medical staff is more sensitive to these points, I think they are better equipped to deal with it rather than dealing it with themselves. Because sometimes it's good in a way, but in a way it is okay. I think I need to refer this one to a psychologist. I think that thing
Correct.
comes, which is also very important. Yeah.
Correct. Like I have personally seen where some athletes who have been, a little down and low, who've got concerns, like I'm not of course gonna delve into it, but who've got concerns and things that they think twice about, or things that are making them, a little low on confidence,
Mm.
which surprisingly in some cases isn't even their sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually something else entirely, but just that worry in their head is affecting how they play. And so I've seen this quite a few times wherein a coach picks it up, or
Mm.
someone else on the team actually picks it up, and then we have that conversation with the team psych, and then they are able to actually address it. And having seen
Mm.
that firsthand, I think it's a very beautiful transformation that you see with the players. So do you have any such
Absolutely.
experiences, any such anecdotes that you have to share?
Yeah, totally. In fact, I will say one more thing. Like, over the last 12, 13 years that I've been working, I think over the last 6 to 7 years, I've seen this gradual change wherein coaches definitely refer athletes to me, which is actually
Mm-hmm.
something which is so nice, because first it was like, okay, we are going to the academy, we are trying to bring about
Correct.
awareness. But right now, especially even the last few years, there have been so many referrals from the coaches, which actually helps. It feels that, okay, the coach is
Mhm.
actually trusting you as a professional. Same goes with physios or even nutritionists. So, if it's good to see a lot of people, like since I'm from Pune, we have like these small groups wherein, there are nutritionists and who ask for psychologists saying, okay, we need sports psychologists for XYZ reason. My athlete needs to visit one. So, this is also again a part of being more sensitive, understanding when the athlete may need help from a psychological perspective. And I think that has grown. So to give you a very recent example, there was a particular cricketer, young cricketer, and again, the referral came through the physio because he was injured twice in 1 year. The first time, it was a very minor injury, so he got done with it very quickly. But the second time, what happened was there was a lot of pressure because it was his last year of that age group. And
Makes
then there
sense.
was pressure from the parents saying that, okay, if he doesn't perform this year, then how is he going to perform next year? All those things. So Tabhi,
Oh
I think
yeah,
that's the time when the physio was like, no, I think, yeah, let me just, I think you need some perspective. So both the parents as well as the kid, had the intake session, and the parent, I just told them that, this is not that it is not the last year that your kid's going to play. So it's better to have a fitter kid than someone who's not fit and then gets re-injured. And that's when that
absolutely.
perspective hit. So I think yeah, it's just good to see like a bit of multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approach, I would say, more of like, intertwined methods which work very well in such cases. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very beautiful way to put it. Interdisciplinary. I mean, that's not, we keep talking about being multidisciplinary, but then it is more
Yes.
important of how integrated we are. And something that has been a question in my mind for these kind of scenarios is some teams, be it football, cricket, whichever the sport, some teams do have a sports psychologist traveling with them, but
Mhm.
that is not the case every time. So some of them prefer to have these sports psychologists just available on virtual consultations.
Yes.
So which of these do you think has a better outcome? Do you think it's better for these psychologists to be present physically, or is it okay for them to be just around whenever they're needed?
I think for a team sport and especially for a traveling team, it's always good to have like a very well aware sports psychologist traveling with them. And by well aware, I mean who would know the nuances and protocols of traveling with a team. Now, that's also something what a lot of sports psychologists may not be aware of, because
Mhm.
like we just spoke about interdisciplinary work. It's not like our work is in isolation.
Correct.
Having said that, keeping confidentiality, if that's a priority for sure, but yet, having said that, we could still have an interdisciplinary approach wherein there has to be talks in between the team members, the support staff, and the coaching staff, which actually is,
Mhm.
something what I would say is a big misconception saying, oh, as a psychologist, I'm going to be my isolated work. That's not the case. But when you're with the team, you
Correct.
need to have that kind of an environment. And I think that's one thing what a traveling sports psychologist has to bear in mind. And I think, yes, for sure, a sports psychologist who travels with the team has a bigger impact than someone who is, a virtual, like seen as more of an outsider, insider kind of an approach, if I would put it in that way. So, yes, if there's
Makes sense.
a traveling sports psychologist, I think definitely it has a bigger impact because there is interaction. There's always that, assurance that you can go and speak to someone. Yeah, that's, I think, yeah,
And
100%, yes, for sure. It's important. Yeah.
yeah, I think like even that ability to have somebody to talk to when you're, outside of your session, just casually, and that helps the player build that rapport.
Yeah.
It just keeps that relationship going and the trust, which is all very important when it comes to, having that psychological interventions in place. So, what do you think are some ways that coaches or the rest of the support staff can actually sensitize themselves, and what are some strategies that we can put into place to make sure that this is a holistic journey?
Absolutely. So, like I said, I think first step is accepting and acknowledging the fact that sports psychologists are not only there to help when there's an issue, but it is
Yeah.
just okay. There is someone who is struggling with possibly just optimizing the performance from, say a ground Z to Z1, like, that is how it is. And that needs some kind of psychological push. And I wouldn't just say motivation, it could just be like building that kind of self belief around them. That could be. So first of all, awareness and acknowledgement that okay, this is needed, and someone more than me can do it. That's the first step. Secondly, I think being more aware, like, of understanding the signs, symptoms, if the athlete is on the other side of the spectrum, which is like, okay, they are maybe in a slump, they're not doing very well. They might, and that will have psychological ramifications when it comes to like, okay, I'm not being selected, I'm not, gone the next step. I've been then and there for the last 6 months. What am I supposed to do? Now, and in such a case scenario, it's always good to take the help of a sports psychologist, because we can help them plan more than the sport, or we can help them
Mhm.
see that okay, where exactly they are right now psychologically, what are the thoughts that they are having, how is that impacting the habitual pattern. So all these things help. I'll give you an example here. There was one case where in the sports nutritionist also recommended some sports psychologist intervention here. One where she noticed there was a pattern of change in the person's, in the athlete's diet. Okay, first
Mhm.
of all, she noted that because maybe she was like, okay, maybe there's a season change, there is a change in their recovery, there would be something. But then later on, she realized that pattern is getting into much more of a disordered eating pattern. So that's when it she realized that okay, this is something to do with maybe some psychological factors. And the coach then spoke to her saying that this one is going up in a bit of a shell. What should we do? So that's when the team
Right.
sports psychologist intervened and again got this sorted in a better way. So yes, so I think just noticing these small signs and symptoms wherein there is a change in the pattern, there is sleep change pattern, food dietary change, or sometimes there's also motivational change, like there's an athlete who's on time every day, but maybe there were 1 2 occasions when he's not coming on time. What's the deal? There could be something beyond the sport which may be impacting that. So if these things are noticed by the staff, then it gets easier for them to say that okay, maybe a psychologist intervention is needed here. So yes, so noticing signs and symptoms, I feel, is the main thing of being more sensitive towards the fact that the athlete also can go through certain things. It's not like as it's portrayed, okay, it's like always the athlete has to be tough, mentally stronger, physically
Yeah.
stronger, kind of a thing. But
I think
yes,
that itself puts so much pressure on them,
yes,
that perception.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So yeah, I think this is the first step for sure. Just understanding basic behavioral signs and symptoms. If there are changes, for sure there is something psychological which could be, in that space.
Yep. So, something that we've noticed in a clinic setup, I mean, more in a team setup, they know that there is a psychologist available. So
Yes.
they know that, that person can be addressed if anything is required. But in a more of a clinic setup, and especially when we are handling upcoming athletes who aren't
Mhm.
familiar with the arena of sports psychology,
Yeah.
and with all the taboo around the topic that's been there for generations in our country, what is some ways that you think we can, in a subtle way, nudge them towards going to a psychologist without really triggering them into, why do you think I need to go to a psychologist? Do you think there's something wrong with me? Because sometimes it's not just about
Yeah.
something being wrong. It's just that added support that they need to, maximize the outcomes. So
Yeah.
how can we address that in a delicate manner?
Great. I think this is a great question, and this reminds me and this brings me to a very two important points, I would say. One is just encouraging them with subtle practices which can help them even without going to a sports psychologist. Like one could
Mm-hmm.
be, practicing relaxation techniques, which is,
Mm-hmm.
I think, like a mandatory thing. It could be done even by going to, like, say, a physiologist or someone, maybe a yoga expert who can actually help them have a better breathing pattern, right?
Yep.
Secondly, it's also managing thoughts, right? That's another part. Unless and until it's
Yep.
an extreme case, maybe they can actually become much more aware of their thought patterns by just writing stuff down. So, diary writing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel these two tools can be done even without going to a sports psychologist. But if maybe by encouraging them, saying that, okay, if you want to have a healthier habit, then you may need to go to a sports psychologist who will help you develop this into a regular pattern, right? So maybe just addressing the tools helps them understand that it's not just I have an issue and I am going to therapy, but it's more
Yep.
of, okay, like, they are going to help, the sports psychologist is going to just help me establish healthier patterns in my lifestyle so that I'm mentally much more fitter. So, that could
Makes
help
sense.
them possibly have a changed perspective. That's one thing. Secondly, if you find someone at the other end of the spectrum saying that, okay, maybe
Mhm.
there are subtle signs showing maybe some kind of mental health problems, or maybe she is seeping into like an anxiety or like a some kind of issue. IOC, International Olympic Committee, they have a standardized recognition tool for all the medical as well as support staff. It's called as SMHRT, which is Sports Mental Health Recognition Tool. Now, this is freely
Lovely.
available on the IOC website. I would suggest everyone involved in the athlete's entourage to just download it. Look at the signs and symptoms which are associated with mental health issues or anything that an athlete can can go through. Once that, and it's a one pager document. If you check, I think out two or three signs out of whatever is mentioned, you know that you need to refer this person to maybe even a clinical psychologist if it is needed. So yes,
Correct.
so that could be one another way that again the entourage is sensitized towards what can we do next. It's like it's
Makes
the
sense.
first step of like a referral protocol, I would say, if those signs and symptoms exist. So yes, I think everyone can just download that off the IOC website and have a look at that as well. Yeah,
I think we'll just leave a link to that
perfect.
document in the description. So, if anyone is interested, and I think I would urge everyone to actually download it, but whoever is interested, please.
Yes,
So, with that, I think we've gotten a fair idea of how important the entourage is around an athlete and how we can, at least the basics of identifying when an athlete requires that help and support. So it's
perfect.
actually an amazing session. And as you know, we will keep continuing this discussion
Yeah.
with further sessions. So thank you so much, Vardhani, for coming on our podcast today.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Harini. And I think this is a great initiative of going a bit beyond the dialogue of just sports psychology and like, understanding how everyone is involved in that space as well. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vardhani. And everyone, subscribe to the Performance Podcast for more such amazing content. Thank you, guys.